In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to edit your narrative essays. We are going to use this rubric, My Narrative Writing, with different categories. We're going to go over our essays, organization, and purpose, asking ourselves, does my story have a strong lead and beginning? Does my story have transitions that move the story along? Does my story include middle events in an order that makes sense? Does my story have a strong conclusion that solves a problem or conflict? The other thing other category we're going to be going over today is asking yourself if your story has elaboration. So elaboration means you have powerful tier 2 words, strong vocabulary words. Your characters are introduced and described in detail. And you don't just tell something, you show something with descriptive words. And then you have small amounts of meaningful dialogue. You don't want your whole essay to be a bunch of people talking back and forth, but you do want to have characters having dialogue, characters talking in a meaningful way. So we'll go over that as well. And the last category we're going to be going over is conventions. Conventions means if you have things spelled correctly, if you have correct punctuation and capitalization, and I like to include proper quotation marks in there as well. And then we'll do some reflecting at the end. You're going to ask what you're proud of, what your goals are for next time, and then feedback from other writers. And in this case, it'll just be other teachers for you distance learning learners out there. But in the future, other writers, usually you'll get peer feedback as well. We may find a way to still do that with you guys. So the other thing we're going to be going over today is the rubric. Is the graphic organizer. A lot of you have used this graphic organizer lots of times before. So we're going to make sure that our essay also has this few graphic organizer as all the elements of this piece. So we're going to come back to that as well. Okay, so I created an essay for us to go over today, my own personal narrative essay. And we're going to edit that together. So I'm going to start by reading through it, and then we'll go back and forth between this and our organizer here and make sure we have all the elements we need to have a strong narrative essay. Okay, so you always want to start with your heading, your name, the title of your paper, the subject sometimes. You could have writing in there as well. I'd put narrative essay. And you can see my essay here is just one big clump, one big paragraph. So let's go back to our rubric here, organization and purpose. Do you think that it would make sense for me to organize this into paragraphs? I think so too. So as I'm reading through it, you might see me say, oh my goodness, I can't believe I made one big paragraph last time I did this. I'm going to put it into different chunks now based on different ideas. And those different ideas will be based off of this graphic organizer here. So as I'm reading it, you might see me go, oh my goodness, in my head, this is the end of the introduction. I'm going to make a new paragraph now for my character that faces a problem. And then you're going to see me make a whole new tab down for when the problem gets worse. And then you're going to see me tab down again if the character finds a solution. And then finally at the smooth ending, okay? So I'm going to read through it, and you're going to just see me make different tabs and break apart my one big paragraph into smaller paragraphs based on these sections here that I'm going to be reading in my head. Does that make sense? Okay, so one day in the hectic, busy city of Brooklyn, New York, lived a teeny tiny little mouse named Louis. Louis knew those streets like the back of his paw. Louis loved living in New York, but he often felt lonely, even though he was surrounded by so many people. He didn't have a lot of friends. He was just so busy and felt like a bit of a loner. So that for me, I decided that that's going to be my intro, because if you look here at our graphic organizer, I've introduced my character and my setting. We're in New York, and we have a mouse named Louis. He's our main character here. Okay, so on this particular day, Louis saw something peculiar. He saw a small child laying on a park bench. At first, he thought the small boy was sleeping, and Louis decided to continue on with his day. However, after further inspection, he heard sniffling coming from the boy. He walked over to the boy and saw big tears streaming down his face. He scampered up to the bench and looked the boy right in the eyes. "Are you okay?" he squeaked. The boy just sat there, tears streaming down his face, unsure what this little mouse was trying to say. Then Lewis tried again with more confidence to say, "What's wrong?" And the boy's eyes widened with surprise because then Lewis stared back. "You can understand me?" he asked. The boy nodded. Then the boy told him he was lost. He is new to the city and doesn't know how to get home. Lewis perked up. "I know every street in the city." Now I'm going to pause you here. Do you see how we have our character facing a problem? In this case, we have another character. We have a new character named Will, and he's a small boy on a park bench, and he has a problem. His problem is that he's lost, okay? So we are going to make that another chunk all in its own. And that was right about here. Okay. And then Lewis perked up because he knew, "I know every street in this city. I can help you. What's your name?" And the boy replied, "Will." "Nice to meet you, Will." Lewis led Will along the busy streets with ease. Before they knew it, Will started to recognize things. "Oh, wow, I know this shop," he would say. And Lewis just smiled, happy he could help. As they walked, they talked, and Will even started laughing, clearly not as nervous. Then they arrived at an apartment building with lots of houses clumped together. A woman came rushing out. "Will, oh my goodness, where have you been? We've been worried sick." "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said, and then he saw Lewis and she saw Lewis and screamed, "Ah, a mouse! Shoo, shoo!" "No, no, Mom, he's my friend. He helped me get home." His mother looked confused, but went back to hugging Will and telling him to be more careful in the future. Lewis didn't want to ruin the sweet moment, so he decided to leave, glancing over his shoulder at the boy he had fun getting to know that morning, wishing they could continue to walk around and talk. Then Will yelled, "Wait!" and Lewis spun around, eyes wide in excitement again. "Would you like to join us for dinner?" Lewis couldn't believe it. He had a friend. "I would love to," he said. The two boys ate lunch with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and Lewis a peanut and laughed and joked for hours. Lewis wasn't just Will's hero, he was also his friend. So, as you can see, Mrs. Shore has some grammar, some spelling, some dialogue, lots of editing here to do, okay? So I'm going to show you everything. So if you're looking at this essay and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I have little red squiggly lines under my words too," or "I have little blue squiggly lines under my words," or "I forgot where I'm supposed to put my dialogue," don't worry, Mrs. Shore has all that on here too, so we're going to go all of it together. But first, let's finish breaking apart my essay, okay? So we talked about we had the character has a problem. Lewis is helping him because he knows his way around the city really well, but our problem didn't really get super worse, right? So we can definitely go back and add more there for this section here, and we do have a smooth ending, right? So I'm going to break this apart a bit more. So once they got to his mom's house, that's pretty much the smooth ending, right? Here it is. Okay. So do you see how we have different sections here? This is like the introduction of my essay. I'm talking about how we're in New York. Our main character is a little mouse named Lewis. Then Lewis finds Will, who needs some help. Then he's helping him. And then they arrive back at his house, right? So I'm going to add more to our problem here because basically we just have a problem of Will being lost, but let's create a problem for them on the way home. So even though Lewis knows the city really, really well, I could add in a section about how maybe a road was blocked and they had to go a different way, or maybe they encountered some mean mice that are friends with Lewis. Okay, so you can make your problem even worse here. My problem here could definitely you could definitely add more to make it worse, right? Okay, so hopefully that helps you guys understand how you're breaking apart your paragraphs. Now let's go back to organization and purpose. Does it have a strong lead and beginning? Let's see. One day in the hectic, busy city of Brooklyn, New York, lived a teeny tiny mouse named Lewis. Okay, so we do have a strong lead and a beginning. Do we have transitions that move the story along? Transitions are things like next, therefore, finally. So let's see what we have here. On this particular day, Lewis saw something peculiar. So transitions are always going to be at the beginning or the end of the paragraph, okay? On this particular day is a good transition to introduce this one here. The boy told him he was lost. Lewis perked up, clearly not as nervous as they walked and talked, started laughing, clearly not as nervous. Then, see how I have the word then here? That's a transition word. So we can add finally down here. Decided to leave, glancing over his shoulder. We can even say, maybe say finally, the two boys ate lunch. And do you see how Mrs. Shore wrote dinner up here and lunch up here? Be careful of that, guys. Make sure that you're checking it. So I'm going to, down here, I'm going to write, I'm going to change it to lunch so that he was lost in the morning and they came home in time for lunch. Or even that afternoon, two boys ate lunch. Will a peanut butter jelly sandwich and Lewis a peanut. So, okay, we have some transition words. Do we have a strong conclusion that solved the problem? We do. Lewis gets Will home. They enjoy peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They are now friends. Now, he's not just his hero, he's his friend too. Okay, so I'm going to jump to conventions and we're going to clean up our spelling and grammar. I'm going to show you how to do that right now, and then we're going to go back and we're going to add elaborations. Okay, so I'm jumping down to conventions right here. So do you see how I'm just going back and forth between my essay and the rubric and saying, do I have this? Let's see. Let's make changes. Let's go back to the rubric. Let's see if I have that. We'll go back to my essay and we'll make changes. So you guys can do the same thing. Just have both documents open just like this and go back and forth down every single thing. You could even highlight these once you've done them. I'm going to do that now. I'm going to highlight all the things I know I have. I know I have a strong beginning. I know I have some transitions. I know I have events that make sense in order. I didn't decide that the boys were lost and then they just got home. I explained how they got home, how they wandered through the city together. Although, like I said before, we could definitely still add more there, right? I do have a conclusion that solves a problem. So do you see how I'm highlighting the things that I know I have? Do that same thing, guys, okay? And so I'm going to put a little mark over here and I'm going to say, yes, I've got this one. I've got this section done, okay? Now, correct spelling. Let's go back in here. Everywhere that you see red and blue underlines, that means red means something is spelled wrong. Blue means you have a grammar mistake, okay? So we're going to go back through here. And also, I really recommend always reading out loud. Even as an adult, Mrs. Short always reads everything out loud because you catch things like, oh, I spelled that wrong, or I have an extra word here, or I need a comma here. So read it out loud, okay? So I'm going to go to some of these areas that I have these blue and red. And right here it says, the boy sat there, tears streaming down his face, unsure what this little mouse was trying to say. So I know, oh my goodness, was trying to say. And look, do you see how it gave me the word right there when you click on it? Was trying to say. Then Lewis tried again with more confidence this time. Oh, looks like Mrs. Shore missed something in the word confidence. And see how the word right there for me is so easy, 2 clicks. And stared back. In the boy's eyes. So this blue means I was missing this comma between the Y and the S because it's his eyes. You're going to have an apostrophe S, okay? The boy nodded and the boy told him he was lost. Okay, we're good there. Then they arrived in an apartment building with lots of houses clumped together. Oh, one too many L's. Perfect. A woman came rushing out. Will, oh my goodness, where have you been? We have been worried sick. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said. And then she saw Lewis and screamed, ah, a mouse! Shoo, shoo. And it looks like Mrs. Shore's all good there all the way until this sentence here. Lewis didn't want to ruin the sweet moment. I forgot an E right there. Simple little fix. So we decided to leave glancing over his shoulder at this boy he had fun getting to know that morning, wishing they could continue to walk walking around and talking. Then Will yelled, "Wait!" And Louis spun around, eyes wide in excitement again. "Would you like to join us for lunch?" "I would love to." And I just needed a comma there. That afternoon, the two boys ate lunch. Will had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and Louis ate a peanut. And they laughed and joked for hours. Louis wasn't just Will's hero, he was his friend too. Now, let's go back to our rubric here. Do I have correct spelling? Yes, I'm going to highlight that. Whew, we are really crossing things off this, you guys. So fun. Correct punctuation, I fixed it. Those were all the blue squiggly lines. Those were basically my punctuation and my grammar. And capitalizations, yes, we were looking for that too, but we can keep looking for that just in case we missed anything. Because if there's somebody's name or a place or beginning of a sentence, all of those need to be capitalized, right? So let's quickly glance. Let's see. Louis is capitalized. Will is capitalized. All the beginning of my sentences are capitalized. Okay, looks pretty good, but we'll keep that in the back of our mind because there could be one in there that we missed, right? Okay, so now we're going to go back up to, does our story have powerful words? So we're going to go back through and look for things like maybe I have the word good or fine and I want to make it amazing or fantastic or wonderful or something more descriptive, a better adjective. An adjective is a descriptive word, okay? So let's go back through here. I have the word hectic. I could have said busy. I could actually take away busy and say hectic. One day in the hectic, busy is an okay word, but hectic roaring. City of Brooklyn. So roaring is actually an example of personification because a city doesn't really have a mouth, right? It's like a bunch of buildings and people. It's a residence, so it doesn't have an actual mouth to go roar. But if I'm saying that the city is roaring, I'm saying that the city is loud like a roar would be. So that's personifications, and which means I added some figurative language just then, and it was so easy, just adding the word roaring instead of busy, right? One day in the hectic, roaring city of Brooklyn, and we could add lots of examples of that here. And I'm not going to do every single one that there could be here because really, guys, you can make an essay better and better forever and ever and ever. But I'm going to show you a couple more examples here, okay? So, Louis perked up. I know every street in the city. I can help you. Let's see here. That looks pretty good. The woman came rushing out. We can make that one a little bit stronger, right? So she's rushing out. So what does somebody do when they're rushing out? Are they walking slowly or are they walking fast? So I'm going to say the woman came thundering out of the building. Her shoes smacking the ground with loud. Now I'm going to use some onomatopoeia. So I'm going to make some smacking sounds because I'm saying that she's running so fast that her shoes are smacking the ground really quickly. So I'm going to say loud thuds. Okay, so we added some more words. You can do this. You can do an example of this throughout your entire essay. There are almost unlimited amount of opportunities for you to make all your words better. So go back through. I just showed you 2 examples just now. Now I'm going to go look at my dialogue because look here. If you look here, meaningful use of dialogue. So we just went through our words. We'll highlight that. Now I'm going to go through my dialogue. I think that I used a good amount of dialogue and my whole essay isn't just one big clump of dialogue, but I'm wondering if my dialogue, if I used all the right punctuation, if I used quotation marks next to everything I should have used. So I'm going to go look through that now. So if you look here, are you okay? He squeaked. So are you okay? Those are the words that are coming out of this mouse's mouth. Are you okay? He squeaked. So those are going to be in quotation marks because those are the parts he said. And then he squeaked That's my example of, instead of him saying he said, I wanted to say he squeaked. So go back through and make sure that every single thing that is actually coming out of somebody's mouth are in quotation marks, okay? So what's wrong? So this is what somebody's saying. And then, you can understand me, he asked. So see, this part is wrong here. You can understand me. That's the part that he's saying. He's not saying, you can understand me, he asked. He's saying, you can understand me. So this part he asked is not going to be in quotation marks. I have a whole nother video all about this, by the way, if you want some more help with dialogue, or reach out to your teacher. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that I went through my dialogue. And then the characters are introduced and they show detail. I could describe the mouse and Will more, right? So I described the mouse as teeny tiny up here, but I could describe the color of his fur, a teeny tiny brown mouse named Lewis. And I can go on and say, Lewis is a very, very fit mouse because he spends all day walking around the city. Now, instead of just imagining a little fluffy mouse, you're thinking of maybe more of like the mouse from Ratatouille, where he's a little bit more lanky, right? So you can really describe in real great detail because he walks around the city all day. And I put walk around the city all day because one good thing about our character is that he knows the city really well, right? So you can go back and you can describe Will in more detail. We could say Will has sandy blonde hair, or maybe he has cocoa brown skin. You can say whatever you want, okay? But you want to really describe your characters. Okay. Show, don't tell sentences, the same thing. We just kind of covered that. Okay, so I'm going to say, yes, I've covered this. Yes, I've covered this. And then I'm going to say, I'm really proud of. I am really proud of my use of dialogue and creative characters. Okay. My goal is to get better next time. My goal for next time is to create stronger problems in my story. So I only had the problem that Will was lost. I could have made even bigger problems. I could have said Will was lost. I could have said they had a hard time getting back to his house, even though they were starting to find their way because maybe roads were closed or bridges were closed, or they ran into some scary mice or people. And I could have really made my story more interesting and by having harder problems for the characters, right? So I'm going to work on that, is to create strong problems for my characters. Okay? To make my story more interesting. Okay. And then here is where feedback from other writers would go. And then your teacher is going to leave you feedback right here. Okay? So I hope this was helpful to you. If you need any more help from us, you know who to reach out to. You can watch this video again. You can pause it. You can also leave me questions in the comments and I can answer something just for you. All right, have a great day, guys.